All right, thank you, everybody. So I'm Eli Oldenik, 84, and I was very honored when Mrs. D asked me to come and talk about some of my engineering research. It's been so impressive to me to see what the RIOTs that came after us have done. I wanted to talk about sports standings, and so this is an example. You can see it's a little bit old, the question here is, we're looking at this is what used to be the National League West in baseball, and as you can see, the Giants, who I was rooting for at that time because I lived in the Bay Area, they were in last place, very far behind the top two teams. But would it be possible for them to somehow move all the way up to first place, right? Or is their season essentially over? So that's the question. So winning the pennant means finishing in first place in the division. And the traditional way of doing this is very, very simple math. You just sort of look at how many games does the team have left. So in this case, it's 22. And how many games have they won so far? 59. So if they went on a miracle winning streak, they'd win a total of 81 games for the season. The top two teams so far have only won 78. So it's, it's remotely possible that the Giants could catch up. So let me just quick quiz. Anybody recognize this fellow? Oh, Yogi Berra. Okay, great. So Yogi is famous for many pearls of wisdom, particularly this one, "It ain't over till it's over." And so that's sort of the thinking here, right? He's also said things like, when you get to the fork in the road, take it, and nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. All right, so the thing is, what Yogi was saying there is not including all the information that you could use to answer that question. So if we look at the schedule of games that are left to play, we would have seen that the top two teams, the Dodgers and Padres, had a 7-game series left. And in baseball, there are no ties. So that means of those 7 games, at least one of those teams was going to end up winning 4 of them and winning at least 4 of them and finishing with a record of at least 82 wins. So just because of that series between the Dodgers and Padres, there's no possible way that the Giants could finish in first place. So even if they were to win all 22 of those games, we know there's at least one team in here that would have 82 wins at least. And so it turned out that the Giants were actually eliminated. And so I figured this out. And the San Francisco Chronicle did not figure it out for 2 more days. And then they ran this sad story about after last night's loss, the Giants are eliminated and what a terrible season we had and so forth. I did write a letter to the editor. I don't know what they did with it. They didn't answer it. These examples can get very complicated. So this is the same sort of setup, only now we've got 5 teams in this division, and you can see it's the same kind of thing, right? Detroit is way back there, but it seems like it's remotely possible because they still have 27 games left to play. So if they win those 27 games, plus the 49 they already have, that would give them 76. And so maybe a miracle could occur and they'd finish in first place. So here, analysis gets much more complicated because to show that, in fact, Detroit had been eliminated there, and again, was not reported in the sports pages, you had to look at several different series. So these are all the games between all the other teams in that division. And the way that I can show whether or not Detroit is eliminated is to try to just sort of play God and assign wins and losses from these games in a way that, first of all, we'll assume Detroit will win all their games, and then try to manipulate the wins and losses for these other teams so that none of them finish with 76 wins. Right? And so if I can do that, it means Detroit still possibly has a chance. If I can't, then it means they're eliminated. So the goal is to try to create a scenario like that. But it turns out, if you start with the first place team and you see, well, if they win 2 more games, that'll give them 77 wins. And Detroit can only get to 76, so we don't want that scenario. Well, what if they lose all of their games? Then it turns out, they have an 8-game series with Boston, and so that would give Boston enough wins to be above 76, and so on and so forth. And it turns out, you go all the way through this logic tree involving all of those teams, and it turns out Detroit had no way of winning there. So the really cool thing about this is it turns out that you don't have to go through all of that enumeration to make that determination. And the efficient way to do that calculation is set it up like a network and do the kind of analysis that I was talking about earlier and look at how much flow can we send from this S node to the node T over there. And here, 1 unit of flow is going to represent a win. So it's not a bit. It's not a car moving through a traffic network. It's a win. And this first layer here, I've got all of the different series of games between other teams in the division. And the capacity on the arc is how many games are left in that series. And then we've got a middle layer that goes to the nodes for each individual team. And so what's going to happen here in what we call a feasible flow is these 2 wins, they'll get distributed. Maybe they both go to Baltimore, maybe they both go to Boston, maybe they get split 1 and 1. But it has to be one of those combinations. And then we put some capacities on the other end. So the flow that comes in, it's going to balance the flow that comes out. And we want to create a scenario where none of the other teams end up with 76 wins. So I'm going to put an upper limit on the capacity there. So whatever way I distribute the wins and losses here, I got to make sure that New York ends up with at most 1 of those wins. And I do the same calculation with each of the other teams. So just take 76 minus the number of games they have left and put a limit on that. And then it turns out here that there's a minimum cut right there that has a capacity of 26. Right, so that means there's no possible way to distribute all 27 units of flow here to make this balance out. So that shows that Detroit's been mathematically eliminated, as they say, from first place in the division.